Okay, so trimming out windows. Um, I've kind of started on this one. I got part of it done. Um, I've got three sets of triple windows in this house. This is our house to live in, so I'm doing a little more of an extensive trim job than I do when I'm building spec houses. But yeah, so the way I do it is, of course, you got to start with your sill first, and then so what I'll do is I've got these shims, these are door shims. Okay, so I'll take like three of them. This is three 3-foot windows, so we're looking at, it's nearly 10 feet because I left 3 inches between the windows, and so I'll put like three of these shims. I'll just put like one, before you put the sign, obviously, in the wood frame, the 2x4 frame, and then I'll just tack like three of them, and that'll hold this sill up until I get all my measurements. So what I do is, in order to figure out the length of it, okay, so I figure out where these are going to go, and I usually leave. What I do is I leave the back of these these are called returns. These window returns, I leave the back of the window return even with the edge of the window. So the back of this window return is even with the outside edge of the window frame, and there's just space in between here. So the reason I do that is once you get these installed, you end up with an even reveal all the way down. If the back of this follows that edge of the window, that's going to keep you on the straight. So you end up with an even reveal. All right, and that's what you want. It could be a 1/4 inch, it could be less. It depends on your window company and how the windows are designed. But basically, you're going to end up with generally a 1/4 to a 1/2 of an inch generally. It doesn't matter whatever it works out to be, but you want to follow that window frame with the back of this, and that way you'll keep this straight. And then the way I do it is actually what I did is I ripped all these first. These for this house they need to be 3 inches. We use 2x4 walls here. We don't need to use 2x6 because it's not that cold here. So our insulation requirements are, I think, R13. Anyway, yeah. So these end up being 3 inches wide. So I ripped all these for the whole house. I figured out the lengths I needed. I cut them a little bit long, and then I ripped for all the windows in the house. Okay, so and then also all my header pieces. So my header piece sits on top of the side pieces, so that it's nailed down from the top. I just put a couple of 1.5-inch pins in there to hold it, and I lift the whole thing into place, and then all three pieces are nailed together. They're lifted into place. They sit on top of the windowsill, and then I nail them in from the side, and I'll do this is a 6-foot tall window. I might nail it in like 5 places. It's enough. You don't need a lot of nails, because this doesn't get any use, right? So nobody's really touching it. And then you've got your casings are on here, so your casing is pin nailed into here, so that also holds it from moving. So it's not going anywhere. And then the painters will caulk it here. Obviously, if you have stain grade, they're not going to be caulking it here. But for the most part, people use paint grade, which is why I'm using MDF for this, because it's cheaper. And then the painters will caulk here, so it'll hold it. So you don't need a lot of nails. And the way I do it is I use something like for this particular situation, I use this chisel, and I hold the chisel up against the window frame here, which is where I want the back of this return to be even with this, and I'll hold this here, and while I'm holding it with one hand, I nail this with the other hand, putting outward pressure, because the nail's going to want to kick it back a little bit. If it kicks it back a little bit, it's okay. You can stick this in there, and you can shove the window return ahead a little, it'll move on the nail a little bit until you get it even with here. So I put this in, I put this in here, get it, you can feel where the window frame is, and I go ahead and nail it, right? And then, like I said, you keep an eye on what your distance is here. If it looks like the nail pushed it in too far, you just take this and you can kind of move it out and get it where you want it. And like I said, on 6-foot windows, I'll nail it in like 5 places. So bottom, top, middle, and then in between there. So that's 5 places, for example. It's all you need. And then, so this is floating here. It's just floating. It's basically hanging on these nails. And like I said, once you put your trim here and you pin nail it in, every say 12 inches or whatever, it holds us in place. It's not going anywhere. You don't need to shim. My point is, you don't need to shim all of these. It's just a waste of time. It's not necessary. This is the way all the trim guys do it. Nobody shims all of these like you would shim a door. Doors you have to shim because they get use and abuse. This doesn't, so it's okay if it just floats there. And anyways, yeah. So that's the way I do it. And then these are all cut the same length. So I figure out what my length is so I can get an even reveal across the top. Now here I can't get an even reveal because the framers didn't hang the windows. They didn't do a good job installing the windows. So they didn't shim them on the bottom so that they're all even with one another. In other words, they didn't think about, hey, there's 3 windows together. It's going to be trimmed out inside. We need to make sure that these are all set the same height on the bottom. They didn't do that. Now, they got them level, but they don't have this one set at the exact same height as this one. I think this one is down maybe 1/8 of an inch or 3/16 from this one, something like that. And this one's up, like that. And the reason I know that is this sill is perfectly level and flat. There's no waves or anything in it. These are all cut the same length, these returns, and we don't have the same reveal here. Here we have like 3/16, and on this side of the window we have like 5/16. Over here we have like 3/8. Well, right? So, there's nothing you can do about it. The windows are already installed. What's more important to me is that this height here, this edge here and this edge here, that these headers are all the same height. So when I put the trim across the top, it's got the same reveal, right? So you want these to be on an even plane. The windows there's nothing you can do about it. It's not quite as noticeable now. It's a little more noticeable with these windows because I ordered the color clay. If I were to order white, because the trim is going to be white, it would be less noticeable. But, you're going to put the blinds in the windows. Nobody's really going to see it. But it's just one of those things. I used to be a framer years ago, and I was always careful about that. A lot of framers, a lot of people in the trades, actually, don't understand how what they do will affect the trade that comes after them. When I do a trade, whatever trade I do, but like I said, I was a framer for years, I always knew how my work affected the trades after, so I was always careful about stuff that would affect other trades, right? So this is one of those things. I would make sure that all 3 of these windows are set at the exact same height so that when they're trimmed out inside, you have the same reveal here, but these guys didn't do that. Now, a lot of people don't even trim windows out anymore. They just wrap drywall and throw a sill in. I don't like that. I think it's ridiculous. I think it's to me, it's kind of a joke. To just wrap windows with drywall and throw a sill in and call it a day. That's what we've come to these days. I don't do that. I never have. Anyway, yeah. So, but like I said, you want these to be the same. So if your window sill is flat, all the way across, and I checked it with my 8-foot level, and you can shim these under, you can shim that sill if it's got bumps in it or dips or whatever. You can shim that to get it flat. I didn't have to here. They did frame the sills all the same height. They just didn't, when they set the windows in, you always set them on top of a shim. You don't just set them right down on the 2x4 sill. They just didn't get them all even. But anyway, so these are going to be the same. So when I put the trim across the top, these will have an even reveal, okay? Reveal meaning, you know, where the trim comes up to here, goes across over to here, this little bit here, that's called your reveal, right? So anyway, yeah, so that's kind of what I'm doing now. I finished a few other windows over here. This is how they'll end up looking when it's done. So there's a casing, and then there's a parting bead, and then there's a header, and then there's a lintel mold on top, which gives it detail. It's kind of an old school look. It's not Victorian. It's probably early, after Victorian, early 1900s into the Craftsman era. If you want to go from the time period from where this was a real popular style. This is more Craftsman-y. I had now, some of this trim I had, the lintel mold I had made, because you can't find it anywhere. And then these casings I had made. This parting bead, they make that. And then this is just MDF, or if it's longer than 8 foot, I had to make it out of poplar, because you can't get MDF that's 12 feet long. That's the thickness I want, because this is ripped out of sheets of 3/4 inch MDF. And so anyway, yeah, so this casing, what this is I do 4 3/4 wide with 8 foot doors. That's the width you need to look the right scale, if you want to call it that. Because it's all about scale and proportion too. So anyway, yeah, so I had to make this, and all it basically is, I don't know if I have any scraps here. Well, okay, so here's some of it here. So this is it here. So all they did is a round over here and here. So it's basically a piece of flat stock ripped to 4 3/4 wide, and then they put an 1/8 inch round over, and then, so it's 1/8 inch, and then I always have them make, since this is made, I have them make it a full 13/16, which is as wide as as thick as they can make it without going up to the next level of rough stock. Okay. Most of the trim you buy nowadays is 11/16. If you're lucky, you can find 3/4. Trim always used to be 13/16 for years. They started changing stuff after World War II. They keep shrinking it down. It's 11/16 now. I don't know if they're going to go to 5/8. I mean, who knows? Anyway, yeah. So, and then they put they put this little detail on the back so that it sits flat on the, it sits decent on the drywall. But anyway, yeah. So that's what I had them make, and then I had to make other stuff too. But that's what my casings are. So they're 4 3/4 wide because it looks aesthetically correct. In proportion to the size of the openings. I mean, if you've got 6 foot 8 inch openings, you can go down to 3.5, 3 3/4, like that. Depends on how fussy you want to get. And then I had to make the same width, 4 3/4. I had to make thicker stock, and this is inch. I think this is 1 3/16 or 1 1/4. It's also the 4 3/4 wide. Now I didn't have them round the edges over. I had this made in lengths, and then I cut these 12 inches long. I cut a whole bunch of them, and then what I do is I take my 3/8 router and I route the edge over. These are called plinth blocks. Okay, now you can't buy any plinth blocks this size, so I make them, and this stuff's a couple bucks a foot to have it made, so they basically cost me a couple bucks a piece. I'm sure if you could find them already made, they'd probably want to charge you like $10 a piece or something. Anyway, yeah, so I just make these. I haven't done the routing yet, so I don't like to do lots of stuff all at one time. So I do some, and then I get bored, and then. But anyway, these are all. They have the 3/8 round over on. Yeah, so those go down at the bottom. Down here. They give it that old school look. Anyway, yeah. But getting back to the windows, this is how I trimmed out the windows. So I've got my sill here, and then underneath here, I took some door stop to give the sill more thickness. Because when you buy sill nowadays, again, like everything else, it's 11/16. I don't know. I mean, windowsill shouldn't be 11/16. To me, it looks goofy. I mean, but it's pretty standard. It's finger jointed. I mean, this is it here. This is windowsill. That to me is a joke. I mean, that's looks silly. So what I do is I take, this is doorstop. You know, it's got a one edge around. You know, it goes on the door frame, and then when you close the door, it stops the door. And I put that underneath here. You know, it's hard to hold the camera and this at the same time. Anyway, so I put it underneath here, and it gives it more thickness. I just think that looks better to me. You know, that ends up being like inch and 3/8 or inch and 1/4, something like that. Anyway, it's just one of those little details. You know, it's one of those small things. It makes the job look better. And then, of course, underneath that, I put, this is called an apron. Okay, so the trim that goes underneath the windowsill is called an apron. This is door casing. It's some profile of door casing. I think it's 1/16 by 3.5, but I use it as an apron because I think it looks nice. So you end up looking like this. And it gives you this nice profile here on the edge. I do returns. I don't just chop moldings off. I know some people do that because I guess they're in a hurry or something. But anyway, I take the time and I just do these. It's not too big of a deal. Glue them, put a couple pins in there. I mean, it looks better. You know, it's all the little details you do that make a trim job look better, you know, instead of trying to shortcut everything. And then, yeah, so here, I wrapped panel mold around. I made a base out of, this is actually a base molding here in itself, and then it's like, I think it's 4.5 by 1/16. But it's not big enough. Not when you have 12-foot ceilings. Let's see, again, it's all about proportion. I mean, the total height of this base, what this is 1/8, lifted up off the floor, because the company I buy my material from, they don't sell MDF 1/10. Otherwise, I would have bought 1/10. So I lifted up a couple inches, but this is going to cover it, so it doesn't matter. But I get the same height as 1/10. And then this is a 2-inch. It's actually a panel mold, but I use it as a base cap. So I think, well, these are 12 inches high, so this is the total height here is probably like about 10 and maybe 10.5 to 10 3/4 from here on down to the floor. Okay, now, and again, I always leave everything up so you can slide your flooring underneath, and then the painters will just caulk it instead of trying to cut your flooring around all this stuff. So everything is left up, 1/4 to 3/8 of an inch, and then the flooring guys will slip the flooring underneath. But anyway, yeah, so with ceilings this high, I mean, this is, it's 10.5 inches, 10 3/4, whatever it is, it gives you the right proportion for the height of the ceiling. Because to me, if you have a 4 or 5 inch base, and then you have 12-foot ceilings, it doesn't look right. It just doesn't look right. It's all those little things. It's becoming familiar with styles, especially if you really want to learn about trim. You want to learn about proportion. You want to learn how to kind of put things together with modern moldings, or basically. Study the old stuff. I mean, if you ever get into old houses, look what they did. Look at the proportion. Take measurements. Record stuff. Write it down, or take a picture of it, or just to get ideas and influence, because that's. Those were the days of trim. That's when carpentry was carpentry. It's not like nowadays, right? So, and it's not about, okay, they did it with hand tools and all that. I'm not saying all that. I'm just saying it's the day when carpentry was in heavy use. It was in commercial. It was in residential. It was everywhere, up until about World War II. So they really knew how to put it together. And if you want to kind of learn, the problem is most carpenters nowadays, they're learning by doing and looking at the stuff that they're doing nowadays, and there's just I don't like most of the stuff they do nowadays, 95% of it. I mean, I try to follow the old school proportions and details because I just think that they're better. And people like it. They come in and they see like some kind of a trim job like this. Oh boy, that looks really nice. Yet a lot of guys aren't doing it, or they don't know how to do it, or they don't know how to even to present it to a client, for example, because they're only learning within modern carpentry, so they'll throw just a thin windowsill, like I said, they'll just use that sill, and then they'll run a small piece of molding underneath, and they'll put angle cuts on each side of it and call that a window trim out. And I mean, it's not saying that you have to do, it's my house to live in, so of course I'm getting a little more carried away. Although I have done these type of trim jobs in spec houses. But what I'm saying is that, you can beef stuff up using current moldings. I did have to have some stuff made, I know, but I'm trying to use as much pre-made stuff as possible because it's quite a bit cheaper. This lintel mold here, it's like $2.50 a foot, for example. Probably if I bought it, it'd be $1 something a foot. I don't know. It's expensive. I think these casings are. They're not real bad though. Actually, for solid poplar, 1.75 wide. This is made already made, and everything. I think they're $1.60 something a foot. So that's not too bad. It's pretty reasonable. But anyway, yeah. So that's what I'm saying. It's like if you learn some of the old school methods. Or become familiar with them, you can apply them to today's situation. You can do some interesting stuff. I mean, like this kind of stuff, I just kind of make it up as I go along. So this is going to be the TV wall. I'm going to do a wall like this in the master bedroom, where the bed goes up against, and a wall like this in the office. Now, I'm not going to do them exactly the same, because I want them to look different. But like this detail here, down, that's going to be done all the way around here, all the way down the hallway, all the way around up this, through the main entry, all the way around, and then of course this is kitchen cabinets here, so I'll have to do a little bit here to where the kitchen cabinets stop. I am going to do that detail, but I'll probably change this upper part in the master just so they don't all look the same. But again, like I said, I just kind of make this stuff up as I go along. It's interesting. This will all be painted oil paint. All the trim will get oil paint, so it'll all be white oil paint. And then there'll be color on the walls. And then up here, I wrapped all these with crown molding. This is like an 8-inch crown molding. Again, it's about proportion. You got to have a crown molding looks big enough for 10 and 12 foot ceilings. And then, so this is all wrapped. This was framed out with 2x6 on edge, so this is 5.5 inches down. And then I had them wrap it with drywall. And because I didn't want to do all this with wood. It's just, you square edge quarter bead, wrap it with drywall. It's up on the ceiling. They're going to paint it all with oil paint, so it'll look like it's wood, and then wrap these with crown molding. Yeah, so anyway, so that's kind of, when I do windows, I always have them install 2 2x4s between windows, so you get this kind of look between the windows. You don't have this big wide space. I have them do a continuous header all the way across with their framing, and then run 2 2x4s from the bottom of the header down to the floor. That's your support, but it puts the windows close enough together to give you, a decent look instead of having too much space between windows. See, do I have? Yeah, here's the lintel mold. This is like, I don't know, it's like 1 3/8 by 2.5. Now this is a stock mold. It's not a stock molding. It's a stock knife. In other words, the knife that they put in the molder to make this, they already have it. So I don't have to have the knife made. Otherwise, you have to pay knife grinding charges. It's really expensive. They charge you per inch to grind custom knives. So they have hundreds of profiles because they've been around forever. The place is called Houston Hardwoods. It's down in Houston. But they have hundreds of profiles, so I was able to find a profile with knives that they already have. So all I have to do is pay the setup fee because I have to set the knives up on the molder, and then they just charge you per foot to run whatever profile it is. And like I said, they have hundreds of profiles, and I picked that one for the lintel mold. So anyway, yeah. So that's kind of it, and that's kind of the Reader's Digest version. I'll do more as I get more done. I'll do more splaining. Give you some, maybe give you some dimensions. Like this is 48 inches high. I use 1/4 inch birch plywood here behind. I put that on the wall first. I figure out what widths these are going to be. See, again, it's all about proportion, right? So keeping everything in the proper proportion. This is based on, on old school stuff, for example, right? So, and there's many different ways to do this. I mean, you can do many different things. I just chose this. There's all different ways you can do it. But I'll get into more, some more sizing and give some more ideas as I get farther down. Do another video. Anyway, so that's kind of a basic a basic look at what I did. And some more. Let's see here. So this is windowsill. I ripped it down, and then I put the doorstop underneath. I ripped that, and then this is a panel mold. It's the same mold as this. It's a panel mold here. There's a panel mold on top, like that. So anyway, okay, I need to get back to work. Jeez. Oh, check out my channel, because I got a lot of videos on like how to do stuff, framing, how to deal with subcontractors. Just check out my channel. There's all kinds of stuff on carpentry and construction related. Yeah, so that's it. All right, back to work.